Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRC Media. Thank you for joining us today. We're continuing to speak to candidates that'll be on the November 8th ballot, as well as talking to the supporters and opponents to the ballot questions, the ballot initiatives that you'll be seeing as you head to vote between now and November 8th. Today, we're going to be focusing on ballot question number 4, which has to do with the eligibility of driver's licenses. This is actually a law that was passed by the legislature earlier this year. There's been a petition on the opponent side to have it up for a voter approval, and that's what's coming up on November 8th. I'm pleased to be joined now by Nicole Malone. She represents the supporters of question 4 from the Yes on 4 for Safer Roads. Nicole, thank you for joining me. How are you today? I'm sorry, Nicole. Again, thank you for joining us. I had you muted there for a moment.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for having us today.
I do appreciate your time. So, for those people who are unaware of question 4, talk a little bit, if you can, about the legislation that was passed by the legislature this year and why people, when they go to the polls, should support that legislation by voting yes.
Sure. So voting yes on 4 preserves the Work and Family Mobility Act. And as you mentioned, it was approved by and supported by over 75% of the Massachusetts legislature this year, earlier in June. And essentially, it allows all drivers, regardless of immigration status, to be tested, licensed, and insured and get a standard license.
So, in terms of the act, and I'll get into some of the opponents' questions on it, but in terms of your view and those who support the act, it's being couched as a safety issue, making sure that all drivers are licensed properly, have the proper insurance. I guess my question to you is, what sort of problems are we seeing prior to the law in terms of people that are not licensed properly still driving and getting into accidents? I guess what was the issue that drove this to be passed?
Yeah, I mean, the practical reality is that we do have immigrants without status that need to go to work, need to drop their kids off at school, get groceries, make medical appointments. So they are on the roads. So, looking at this from a practical standpoint, everyone, when I'm driving on the road with my family, I want to look to the left and I want to look to the right and know that those drivers have passed a road test, that they understand the rules of the road, and that they have a license. And this law is very much backed by law enforcement from across the Commonwealth. We have the support of district attorneys, sheriffs, and the Massachusetts Major Chiefs of Police Association. They unanimously endorsed the Work and Family Mobility Act because it really is common sense and it comes down to public safety.
Now, let me ask you, in terms of those immigrants that may be, concerned about what will happen if they get a driver's license, right? They may be concerns that, well, if I'm undocumented, I may be reported and something may
Mhm.
happen to me. What are the protections in this law that, again, you're asking voters to support that will actually protect those individuals?
Sure. So, about 16 other states have passed similar legislation to the Work and Family Mobility Act some years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. So we've had the kind of opportunity to see what has worked and what hasn't in the past and in these other states. And so we were very intentional when putting this legislation together that immigrants were protected, that data sharing wasn't going to kind of affect their well-being, and that really a driver's license was just to basically give you permission to drive on the road. And so I think when we approached this issue, it was with open eyes to make sure that we kind of listened and learned from other states and territories to make sure that we were protecting the people that held these licenses.
So, in terms of the people you're speaking to who will be able to obtain a driver's license, are you allaying any of those fears? Are you still hearing some of those fears, I guess, from some individuals who say, I'm quite unsure whether I should, you know, uh, some way have confidence in state government that this process that I'm about to go under will actually be safe for me?
No, we're not seeing that. I think immigrants without status want to drive, they want to go
Mhm.
to work, they need this. They feel that this is a necessary step for them in their daily lives. And, I think that's also speaks to the support from law enforcement as well, the importance of having a driver's license so that when they're pulled over, if they get into an accident, um, hit and runs have dramatically decreased because in other states, sorry, that passed this legislation, I should be specific, because they immigrants without status have a license and they have the opportunity to have a license. They have insurance. These are all kind of really important to the community and everyone else on the road as well.
Yeah. I want to go over some of the claims on the opposition side of this. One of them has to deal with voting. In Massachusetts, when you apply for a driver's license, you have the opportunity to be enrolled in your city and town for the ability to vote. There's a concern by those on the opposite side that these undocumented immigrants who are looking for the driver's license are not citizens of the United States legally, and that in fact they may be given the opportunity to vote. How does that jive with what's in the law?
So that's just simply not true. The RMV registers and gives licenses to many people every day, TPS recipients, green card recipients, those 16 and 17-year-olds that cannot vote yet. They still get licenses and it's not an issue. In fact, a couple weeks ago, Tufts University came out with a report that said that's simply not an issue, that the RMV can very much, in fact, handle this pretty much straightforward legislation and this new addition to their licensure processes. And it's we're not concerned with that. That's just kind of essentially the opposition attempting to make this a wedge issue when really it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Another issue brought up by the opponents is in terms of the workload for the registry of motor vehicles, in terms of maybe an influx of those seeking driver's licenses at the beginning, but also a question about documentation because the undocumented will have not what is considered a standard identification here in America. And they may be from a different country, passports and other forms of identification from other countries, that the registry of motor vehicles may not be able to handle those different types of identification forms that will allow these individuals to obtain their licenses. Is that a valid point in terms of having the registry of motor vehicles not prepared in one way or another to accept these undocumented individuals to get their licenses?
No, in fact, on top of having kind of the time and these measures kind of in us already preparing the RMV for this because this legislation has passed.
Mhm.
Again, we have put in place because we worked in law with law enforcement, pretty stringent identification document requirements to make sure that when immigrants without status applied for licenses, that the RMV was able to help them through the process and give them their license. They would not be automatically registered to vote. Automatic voter registration is kind of a misnomer. It's much more, it's not as automatic as some may think. And so it's not a worry. The RMV, again, will be able to handle it. That was in the Tufts report that came out, bipartisan or nonpartisan report. And I have faith. I have faith in the RMV. I do.
Yeah. Okay. So now, in terms of so the paperwork isn't an issue. There are some on the opposition side that I don't know if you would characterize as this, but I've heard some supporters of the issue characterize it just as you said to make it a wedge issue, something that will ignite their side to come and vote. Is there any validity to that in your mind?
Yes, I think it is. There's a lot of validity to that argument. I think, like I said, this law, the Work and Family Mobility Act, and allowing immigrants without status to get a standard license is very straightforward. It benefits all of us. It makes safer roads for all of us. And, this is not an immigration issue. This is a public safety issue. So, you know, eh, we're not going to solve the immigration debate here in
Right.
Massachusetts. We'll leave that to our federal officials. But what we do have control over is making our roads safer, and that's what a vote for yes on four will do.
Yeah. So let me ask you, since the law has been in place, I believe it was maybe late spring when it was passed. I know toward the end of the legislative session, which ended in June. Do you have any idea on how well it's been received? Are you hearing from immigrant assistance associations across the Commonwealth that they're getting their undocumented immigrants in to get their licenses? I guess, has it been thus far a success as far as you know?
Yep, so the law wouldn't be implemented until July of next year.
Correct. I'm
S
sorry for that. Right.
No, that's okay. But I will tell you that, we have a very broad coalition of supporters that include immigrant advocacy groups, but also labor unions, and like I said, 75% of the legislature was in support of this law, and then a whole slew of law enforcement from across the Commonwealth, DAs, sheriffs, and police chiefs. So I think this broad support for this bill says it all. We can all agree on some things, and that is that we want safer roads for all.
Yeah. Let me ask you as you wrap up, where can people find out more information about your campaign to have people vote yes on question four? As we're speaking, people are already voting either by mail ballot or early in person voting. But where can people find more information about the Yes on Four campaign?
So saferroadsma.com is our website. And you can also follow us at Yes on Four, FOURMA, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
All right. Nicole Malone for the Yes on Four for Safer Roads campaign, asking voters to vote yes on question four between now and November 8th. Thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us here at FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow, and please make a point to vote by November 8th.